Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some and peace out to the rest of you. Black heart, black mind, black in, again. Hit the share button because the message is more important. Listen closely, y'all. Dennis Spurling does not need me to go behind him and add to the message or further explain and expound on it. I'm doing it not because he needs it. I'm doing it because there are those of you in the audience that might need it. And that's why. And I'm not trying to do any injustice to his message. What I'm trying to do is a justice to the idea behind his message, or do justice to the topic of his message for your sake and for your benefit. We are moral beings, and so when he talks about being on code in his last video, he's right. We got to be on code. We black men need to be on code. We black men have to understand the sisterhood is on code. The gynocracy, the matriarchy is on code. When you are right and they are wrong, they are still on code. You're not going to get them to say they're right, we're wrong. Because see, the ones of them that would say that are then they're considered no longer part of the sisterhood, the gynocracy, and the matriarchy anyway. They're isolated and pushed out and shut out as a pick-me or a pick-misha. They're castigated for it, as I've said before. The code, they're considered in violation of the code by the rest. The code is to be against us and for them. It is a war. As I've said before, this is not a competition. It's not some kind of sports game or sports match. It is a damn war. It is a war of deceptive reproduction. The goal of their war, their aim, is to conceive a few men's babies and deceive the rest into raising them, or guilt the rest of us into raising them. And most of us are not the men whose babies they want to conceive. They actually believe that many of us are genetically inferior, and they have such a contempt that they don't even like the idea of a lot of us having a satisfactory heterosexual experience between the thighs of attractive women. That bothers a lot of them, believe it or not. That whole idea gets a lot of them angry. Why should you? A normal man to them is considered inferior. That's their code. So as I said before, it's war. And in war, even in a Cold War, you don't admit guilt publicly to the enemy. You may, in fact, get one of your own for violation of the code. But you don't necessarily admit guilt publicly. What I mean by that is, yes, you may very well say to some of these sisters, okay, it is wrong to cheat. It's just as wrong when y'all do it. You always flip it back. Yeah, it's wrong for a man to harm kids. Yes, it is. It's just as wrong when women do it. You always flip it back. You don't necessarily justify what is unjust. What you do is you understand that if we're going to go after a particular man and drag him through the mud for something they did that's wrong and you can't defend it, we still do it internally between each other. We don't do it in front of them and make a show of it trying to get their approval. They're not going to approve. Mr. Spurling was right. I mean, he was right in what he said in general. But what was important for us to understand was that when we think that we're speaking truthfully and righteously and justly, even in condemning men for the wrong things they've done, we think that they're hearing manhood and justice. In reality, like he said, they're hearing weakness. That's what they're hearing, weakness. So and I've made that mistake before. I've thought that my ability to say, oh yeah, I screwed that up, or my ability to say, no, he was wrong for doing that. Him being a man doesn't make it any better. That's wrong too. That this was because I'm just telling the truth and speaking the truth, even if it's against myself or my side, that I was being righteous, I was thinking that they would know that this is a man speaking. No, that's weakness. They hear weakness. That's what they hear, weakness. Now this says a lot about them. And I would say to you, you're not required to respect that mess. You're not required to respect women to think this way. I don't care if they're 60, and I don't care if every woman in your vicinity has that mindset. You're not required to respect them if they think this way. But because of this, we also must understand that this gives us the right to not say these things about another man. So what that means is, if you know R. Kelly did what they say he did, if you know he did what they say he did, you don't necessarily have to defend him. You just tell the ladies, close your damn mouth. We're dealing with this internally. We men already got our stance on him set, and it's not to make you happy. It's just based on what's right or wrong. It ain't about your feelings. And the reason I say that is because there are many times when people will say something that is right, but for the wrong reasons, especially when they're immature. And this is one of the signs of development or underdevelopment. I've used an example here with these tragic mulatto Bedouins, many of whom I teach, or taught, I should say, because they've gotten better over the years. But in the beginning, when I first got here, and I really heard them use the word abd a lot to describe us, meaning slave, or abid, meaning slaves, and I would get on them. Who the F are you calling a slave? You high yellow terrorist. And mind you, I'm light skinned myself, but I would just get on them. What about you sand colored terrorist? Where your bomb belt at? And I've said this to students too, and dared them to say something about it. And they try to justify it, and they say, well, we don't mean any harm. And they really don't. They don't mean malice when they do it, but they don't care. And they will say 3 statements that are actually true. I'm going to tell you what they are in case you've forgotten. The 3 sentences are, Bilal was black. Arabs are not better than non-Arabs, and whites aren't better than blacks. And then they would say, we're all slaves of God. Okay. These statements are true. Islamically speaking, we are all slaves of God. A race is not better than another race. And yes, Bilal was black. He was described as being very black. You know what? Ali was also described as being that, and he was a close kinsman of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be to him. They were described as having the same complexion, and Bilal was described as being real black. Like black with a capital B and 4 A's in the middle. Black. With a Q at the end. An exclamation mark. You understand what I'm saying? If he sneezed inside of a car, he would tint the windows. That's how he was described. Ali was described as the same way, and yet they translate into English different complexions. They'll take the same description in Arabic, dark, severe in darkness, and then translate them into 2 different descriptions in English. So Ali gets described as tawny, and Bilal gets described as very dark. Stop and think about that for a second. So they'll say the right thing for the wrong reasons. Of course, I get on them, but that's beside the point. That's what you're going to be dealing with a lot of times with the sisterhood. They're going to want you to say the right thing when somebody's proven to be wrong and indefensible, but they want you to say the right thing for the wrong reason. And so what you do is you stop them and you say, hold up, we're already dealing with this internally. We already know right from wrong. And we're not changing the definitions of what's right and what's wrong. We're just not going to make a show of it in order to get your approval, because you ain't going to approve no way. And they're going to want to know, what do you mean by approval? And that's when you say, well, women, we already know. You lose respect, you dry up downstairs. What you don't understand is that makes you useless to us at that point. But that's also why I keep telling you, brothers, get them passports. Get a skill set that's going to get you the out of that matrix. And you leave them alone, the Western white woman and the Western black woman alike. Leave them be. The Western sister that you might need to give a chance to, usually I'll put it like this, wherever you're going, they're already there. If they really are worth a shot, one way you can tell is that they're already there where you're going. And if they were worth a shot, they'd already be taken. That's the truth of the matter. And of course, they're not going to ask you to break the code. Mr. Spurling is right. The code does not preclude a conscience. There's a balance between them. You just got to remember that admitting the truth about your own or the guilt of one of your own does not mean you do it in front of the opposition so as to appease them. doesn't mean that. It means that you handle it internally, because they ain't got a furthermucking thing to say about it, since they ain't on your side no way. They're already they've already defected from the team that men and women were both supposed to share. They've defected from that team membership and turned on us. This is not something we did to them, it's something they did. Feel no guilt about it. Stay on code. Your conscience does not have to suffer. Remember, in this war, you're not the aggressor. So whatever you do to win is already fine. It's already fair. We didn't start this war. We didn't want it. We didn't even know there was a war for a long time. Your conscience should not bother you. You don't have to lie and say that wrong is right and right is wrong in order to remain on code, like what Dennis Spurling is rightfully telling us to do. You just have to understand the conditions under which you confess to rightness or wrongness is what determines whether or not you break the code. So, you know what? Yes, let them come with proof that Bill Cosby is actually guilty of what they say. Then if they come with proof, we can sit up and say, yeah, we can't defend that. We don't have to say in front of them, yeah, okay, you know what, he was wrong and we're sorry about that. And yeah, you know, we men have been, no, we haven't. No, most of us have not. Nope. And a lot of us could not. As I can tell you now, when I was growing up, I could not have invited a bunch of ladies to a party where there were going to be drugs. Absolutely could not have done so. So anyway, y'all get the idea. Stay on code. It does not preclude your conscience. Thanks for listening. I hope that what I've said one day won't be necessary, but in the meantime, I hope it helps. Black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it.